Story, ladies and gentlemen, and that is Piers Morgan and George Galloway. I finally got a chance to watch this. So here's the thing. George Galloway is pretty based. I think Piers picks a fight with the wrong people. And one of those people just happened to be George Galloway recently. Not only do you catch Piers Morgan in a bold-faced lie, which he tries to correct later on, but Piers Morgan seems to think that it is up to him to decide who should be obliterated and who should not be. George Galloway really puts him in his place. Let's go ahead and get into the first part here that I want to cover. Let's bring this in here.
Well, you did a good job as his Alistair Campbell to him as Tony Blair. I hope he remembers you if he does get into the Prime Minister's seat. I'm frankly astounded that you did not ask him about the bombing of the Iranian state TV station just a couple of hours ago, the mass murder of tea ladies, technicians, journalists and broadcasters. I can't believe that you didn't know about that. And indeed, Professor
Actually, I don't know about that.
was...
You've just told me that. So that's the answer to your question. I didn't know about that. I've been on air.
But he did. But he did know about that. He pretends he didn't know about the bombing that happened at Press TV. You know that he knows that because, and then we'll go back to that segment in a second. It was just when he was interviewing Professor Morandi, as you'll see, Professor Morandi says it right here that they have been bombed. Listen to this.
Iran's terrorism game
I am in a
is
building.
up.
I'm in IR. I am in IR. I am in the Iranian radio television building, and it has been emptied because they say they're going to bomb this building. And I stayed here for you, and you are.
And I think he cut a little bit there, but I had to play that again to show you, yes, he did know about it. Professor Morandi, this interview with Piers Morgan happened before the interview with George Galloway. So there's Professor Morandi telling him right there to his face what just happened to that building. But yet he tells George Galloway that he didn't know anything about it. You see how this man just continues to lie? Let's go on.
Well, you really need to be better briefed.
Well,
you're
okay,
interviewing a guy that you're punting.
You can have your views about that.
This is
in answer
very
to your
important.
question, I didn't know. So that's the answer to your question.
Well, you should have known.
Well, you're a better journalist than me. You're a better broadcaster than me. I didn't know.
Professor Morandi was in that building. I don't know if he's dead, but the story is that he was in that building to do an interview with you, and I very much hope that that is not true. And I very much hope that he is still alive.
He told me that was true. He told me that he'd been told to leave, but had decided to stay and do the interview, in which all he did was call me a liar, a coward, and a genocide enabler.
So here's Piers admitting that he did know. So how is you didn't know, but you say you did know? You see what I mean? So I don't know if a producer or something, I don't know if he has an earpiece or whatever, but it was very clear that he told the lie first. And now he tries to say, oh, yeah, well, Professor Morandi told me. So you did know. Leading propagandists.
So you did know about the bombing of the Iranian TV
there was
station.
no bombing going on when I interviewed him, obviously, or I would have stopped the interview.
Piers, there's mass casualties.
Yes, George.
In the
you
Iranian
asked me
TV
if I knew
station.
it was going on when I interviewed him. I didn't.
Well, it's a disgrace that you did not know.
Well, I didn't, or I would have
because you
stopped.
might have been able.
Now he's saying that he didn't know. You see this?
I did. If I'd known, I would have stopped the interview, obviously.
Well, this is going to grow and grow as an issue, Piers. You may very well be in difficulty here.
I won't be in any difficulty at all. Why don't we get on with the interview?
One thing you did know is that Israel has scores, if not hundreds, of nuclear weapons. And you did not mention it. Why is Israel allowed illegally to hold scores, if not hundreds, of nuclear weapons in defiance of the law, uninspected by any agency in Dimona? And reports today from Dimona are that they are currently modernizing their nuclear fleet. Don't you think that would have put in a better perspective this issue of nuclear weapons? The reason I know you know it is because the brave Jewish whistleblower Mordechai Vanunu, who blew the whistle on Israel's nuclear weapons, came first to the Daily Mirror and was betrayed by your enemy and mine, Robert Maxwell, to the Mossad, and then spent 22 years in prison in solitary confinement, and turned up in the courtroom with his jaws wired together like Hannibal Lecter, so he couldn't tell the courtroom what he told the Daily Mirror. Finally, the story appeared in Andrew Neil's Sunday Times, but only after Maxwell had betrayed him to the Mossad.
So I think what's important that George Galloway mentions here is that why is it that it's okay for Israel to have a nuclear weapon, but it's not okay for Iran or, maybe Pakistan or whatever to have a nuclear weapon? And for me, it's the hypocrisy, right? And the inconsistency. You know who else has a nuclear weapon? North Korea. Do you see all this hostility from the US government trying to take that from North Korea? Why is it they're not focused on them having a nuclear weapon? Does everybody see the inconsistency here from the US government? So the thing is this, ladies and gentlemen, if you're in that region, and if it were me and I'm in that region, and if I'm Iran, why is it that Israel is allowed to have a nuclear weapon? Israel, who wants nothing but to see my destruction and has called my country the curse. How am I supposed to feel? And so the thing with nuclear weapons is this: you get rid of all of them, or you let that be open to everybody. You get rid of all of them, or you let it be open to everybody. You do not get to make these exceptions for Israel. That is the thing that bothers me so much to the core. This exceptionalist of this supremacist state, this colonizer. You do not get to let them be the exception, and you tell other countries that they're not allowed to. Colonialism didn't end. It's still happening. It's called Israel. Let's let them continue.
This issue of nuclear weapons, according to Tulsi Gabbard, Iran is not seeking to build a nuclear weapon.
Why would you believe them?
February.
Why would you believe them?
Well, I believe Tulsi Gabbard.
But why do you believe Iran?
No, I'm believing Tulsi
given that
Gabbard.
The Atomic Agency,
I'll come on to Iran.
Given that the Atomic Agency,
why do you want to dodge Tulsi Gabbard?
You've talked and talked and talked. Let me get a question in. The Atomic Agency, as you know, brought out a report in the last few days. It made it clear that Iran had lied, obfuscated, denied access, not allowed enough inspections, and that it now got uranium enriched to 60%, which is a massive stage forward from where they were at 3% a few years ago to now 60%. And the move from that to being able to create a nuclear weapon is actually much closer and therefore more potentially imminent as a threat. And I'm just curious why you would trust Iran as far as you could throw it, the regime, not the people, the regime, when they are clearly accelerating their nuclear program.
Why would you trust that agency when the director of intelligence, when Tulsi Gabbard said back in March that was not the case? Also, why is it that Israel doesn't have to have any inspection, but everybody else has to be inspected? You know what I mean? So it's like, you got to have an inspection for Iran, but you don't have to have an inspection for Israel. Again, with the inconsistency, the exceptions that are made for Israel.
Clearly accelerating their enrichment program.
Piers,
why would you not be concerned about that?
Piers, I trust Tulsi Gabbard, Donald Trump's director of national intelligence.
You do?
Don't you?
Well,
Don't you?
do? I'm surprised you do.
I'm very much hoping she'll be the next president, Piers. But I trust her. Don't you?
I don't know. I've interviewed her once in my life. I don't know whether to trust everything she says or not.
Well, you know that Donald Trump appointed her the director of national intelligence. Why would you doubt her?
Look,
Isn't Trump your friend?
I'm not doubting her or trusting her or untrusting her.
Does he appoint liars?
I'm asking you why you. I'm asking you why you trust the Iranian regime when they say they're not wanting to build a nuclear bomb.
Well, you're actually asking the wrong person for this reason. If I was running Iran, I would long ago have had a nuclear weapon because Israel has scores or hundreds of them. And as you've just heard, is determined to bring about regime change in Iran. So you won't get me to clutch my pearls about Iran having nuclear weapons.
Why wouldn't you want regime change in Iran out of interest?
So then he brings up regime change, right? Regime change, has nothing to do with Israel bombing Iran. You see, they keep trying to lead it back to that. Oh, the women and the children. Oh my God, the women are not allowed to have an education. The lies that I've heard are just absolutely ridiculous. Like, people are saying things that are 100% false, just exaggerating. We care about the women. We care about the children. No, you don't. If you cared about the women and the children, you would leave Iran alone. You would leave them alone. You would not intervene. You would not try to tell them what they can and can't do and what type of... Iran has a constitution, yes? Does Israel? Everybody has to wake up, right? Everyone has to wake up. Now, this piece here is probably the part that is the most telling, because Piers Morgan, for whatever reason, seems to believe that he can get to decide, or Western powers can get to decide who is worth keeping around and who isn't. Check this out.
Iran is presently the hero of the vast majority of people in the world.
Oh, rubbish.
And it's
absolute rubbish.
That you can't see
what a
that.
load of absolute
Piers,
nonsense.
Take your eyes off the posterior of the tiny part of the world, which is the Western world.
You think
Africa is with
most
Iran.
of the world, you think
Latin
the rest of the world
is with Iran.
You think the rest of the world
China is with Iran.
Yeah.
Russia is with Iran.
Russia,
all
China,
the Arabs are with Iran.
Russia, China,
Take
any
your
other
nose out of the ass
North Korea
of the tiny number of people that you think are the world. They're not the world. The world is 8 billion people.
Right.
You're speaking for the little clique that leads a tiny fraction of fewer than 1 billion of the people of the world.
So just to be clear,
you simply cannot see beyond the end of your nose.
As I suggested then.
So let's be very clear. Let's show you what George Galloway is talking about so you can see it by the numbers, because I think people need to see this, right? When we talk about the West, let's go ahead and bring this up here on the screen. Check this out. The world population, excluding the NATO members, right? So, of course, they did a little bit of formula here, but I thought this is really important. The world population is estimated to be approximately 8.232 billion people as of June 2025. Okay. The combined population of NATO members is approximately 973 million people. This is about 961 million based on other sources. Using this figure, 973 million for the NATO population, the population of the world minus NATO countries is 8.23 billion. 8.23 billion minus 973 million equals 7.2 billion people. Do you guys understand what George Galloway is saying? We are a small part of the world. We are not the majority. We are the minority. The West is the minority. And the United States, the US, it talks a big game. We're a big, bad, but we're tiny. We're not the rest of the world. So when people make these statements like Piers Morgan, they make these statements and they say, the world feels this, the world feels that. They're talking about it from a Western perspective, from the view of a Westerner. Professor Morandi invited Piers Morgan to come to Iran. He refuses to go. We are not the world. The majority of people in the world exclude us. You got to think about this for a second. There's more people in India and more people in China than there is in the United States. So when you remove the NATO countries, we are a small part of the world. So George Galloway is correct when he says The world is standing with Iran. He's right. You have to get outside of your bubble. Piers Morgan needs to get outside of his bubble. He didn't want to go to Iran because he don't want a different perspective. He want to stay in the Western bubble. And I got to break it to you, folks. The other countries, the way things are going, they'll probably continue to get bigger. Don't forget the childbirth rate. There's a big decline here of that in the United States. And some of these other countries that Piers doesn't want to acknowledge, they're still having children. So until we start to sit up there and try to understand the rest of the world, first of all, in that we are not the world, we are a minority. When you compare us to the rest of the population, we'll never fully get it. The Western view is not the majority. And that's the problem with the West. So when you hear that from Piers and you hear that from George Galloway, that's why George Galloway is trying to say to him, that's why he broke that to him, because Piers doesn't get it. You guys have got to get out of the Western mentality. Let me let him finish here.
You want to put up as a defense for Iran that they're supported by China, Russia. Did you mention North Korea?
That's a lot of people, isn't it?
Oh,
Piers?
yeah. But are they the kind of people, in terms of their own regimes, that we should be taking as good supporters of these benevolent people
You're
in
living
Tehran?
under Keir Starmer's regime, for God's sake. You're going to blame the British for Keir Starmer? The French are living under little Macron. When did you get the right to decide that 7/8 of the world's population cannot be considered valid because you, Piers Morgan, don't like their regimes? Listen, there's something else you didn't mention, and you must also have known about that. Unless you switch your mobile off at 10 o'clock at night, you already know that Iran is giving Israel a bloody good hiding every single night.
It's not, though, is it?
Described it all.
It's not, though, is it?
You described it all
not, though.
as a wonderful military operation
as
being
always,
conducted by Israel.
let me answer you. As always, the Iranian regime has put out apocalyptic statements about this will be the annihilation of Israel and everything. It's like it did the last time. And you know what happened last time? Nothing. They fired a few rockets,
Piers.
and the dome dealt with them. This time they've got a few. This time they've got a few missiles have got through the dome. But the idea.
No, it's actually more than a few. Like I said, Colonel McGregor said earlier today, it's about 1/3 of Israel that has been hit. The damage is done. I think George Galloway did a really great job. But I really do think like that conversation from him and Piers Morgan, it really does open up a perspective that I think people really need to get out of the Western mindset, and they really need to start thinking on a global level. And by thinking on a global level, that means getting outside of your bubble, right? Leaving your comfort zone and starting to see things the way that the rest of the world sees it, the majority of the world sees it. Because like I said, we're tiny. Let's go to the comments in the chat, ladies and gentlemen. AB said India and China together alone is about 1/3 or 30% of the world's population. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.